Tonight, President Biden landing in Italy for a high-stakes summit. A critical focus, the war in Ukraine. A Russian missile strike today in Ukrainian President Zelensky's hometown killed at least 9 people and injured another 21, including 2 children. The White House announcing President Biden will sign a bilateral security agreement, pledging long-term defense cooperation. This as Russian warships arrived in a show of force off the coast of Cuba, just 90 miles from the U.S. The Pentagon has sent ships and aircraft to track them, but says they don't pose a threat. The G7 summit will bring together leading democracies. President Biden is looking to shore up alliances, though every leader at the summit is facing low approval ratings. Just days ago, in European parliamentary elections, hard-right and populist parties scored a clear victory. But also weighing on the president, the felony conviction of Hunter Biden. While he's ruled out pardoning his son, today the White House press secretary did not rule out the president commuting Hunter Biden's sentence, which could erase or reduce any potential prison time, but would not expunge the conviction. A White House official later telling NBC News any talk of a commutation was premature. Biden aides, meanwhile, are looking ahead to Hunter Biden's September tax evasion trial in California, which could expose new information about his foreign business dealings. Here in Italy, President Biden is expected to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky tomorrow and Pope Francis on Friday. Lester?
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.